It's a really amazing little family right now. I have my husband Bart, who I love with all of my heart, and we have a 2.5-year-old son Luke, who I love probably a little more than I love Bart. But for the most part, right now, I really love us as a family. We're not without our spats and troubles and, 2.5-year-old meltdowns. But probably in 85% of my domestic life, I feel really loved and respected and supported. And I also really feel inspired to make sure that my husband and my son feel the same way. It wasn't always headed in that direction, though. My husband, Bart, is my second husband, and my son, Luke, is the result of my second pregnancy. The first time I got pregnant, I can pinpoint for you the exact moment that it happened. My now ex-husband had just gotten home from spending a month in Australia, and we were having this sort of obligatory, haven't seen you in a while kind of sex. And he asked me where he should come, and I was trying to be sexy, so I was like, anywhere you want. Throughout the course of our relationship, we'd practiced a lot of forms of birth control, or we'd tried to. They'd either left me in extreme pain or on an unmanageable roller coaster or with a nasty rash of some sort. So for the 2 years leading up to this moment, we'd been practicing withdrawal, and we both knew that. So he says, where should I come? And I say, anywhere you want. And by that I meant like my hair or my face or my tits. And when he did come, I was like, dude, we both know I meant anywhere but there. There is a shame and there's a stigma that comes from having an abortion. I was 31. I was married. I had a job. I think I had health insurance at the time. I wasn't ready to have a kid. And I knew that if I had a child with my now ex-husband, I would be forever locked into this horrible relationship with a man that I don't like and I don't trust. So I pee on the stick and I show it to my now ex-husband, and he smiled because I guess he wanted a traditional family. And I looked at him and my first thought was, get a job, buddy. And then I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, I'm really sorry, little tadpole. And I said out loud, I'm gonna call the clinic tomorrow. At Planned Parenthood, my shame escalated. I was wearing mismatched wool socks and a paper robe in the waiting room, and all the other women in the room, I was wondering if I could even refer to them as women. They were pregnant, so I guess they must have been, but they were all significantly less old than I was. And they were saying things like, my youngest is 3, he lives with my mom, I just can't have another one right now. I remember looking around at them and thinking, wow, women of this new generation are so beautiful. And then I looked around at the people that they were with. Most of them were there with an aunt or a mom who were, my age. And I remember thinking, this new generation isn't much more beautiful. They're just in that shiny bracket of 16 to 22. The nurse, she might have been an intern, took my blood pressure, and she said it was 90/60, and I said, that seems really low, and she said, it's really healthy for pregnant women to have lower blood pressures, especially older pregnant women. Then she asked if I wanted to be informed if they saw any evidence of twins, and I said, yeah, sure, why not? They asked me if I wanted 800 milligrams of ibuprofen or intravenous narcotics. And I asked if one cost more than the other, and when they said no, I opted for intravenous narcotics. The nurse tied off my arm. I averted my eyes because needles. She said, just a little prick, and I said, that's how I got here. And then I said, so, how long is this gonna take to work? So they wheel me into the room, and the doctor walks in, and he is a dead ringer for Steve Martin. And I'm like, oh my God, I just loved you in The Lonely Guy. That's your best movie. It's so underrated, but it's your best work, the fake sweat part. And then I picked up on some social cues from the doctor and the nurse that informed me that I should probably just shut the hell up. But I was suddenly feeling super chatty. So I opted for small talk, and I said, so, why'd you decide to become an abortion doctor? And he told me that he had been studying linguistics at Harvard, but he didn't feel like that field would help anyone. And so he switched to medical. And I was like, oh my God, that's so funny. I'm taking a linguistics class right now at the Harvard Extension School, and I'm like so fussy about semantics. Like, I think language is like so important. It's like, language is like, you know, it's crucial. It's crucial. And he said, are you ready? We're about to begin the procedure. And I said, the procedure? Oh, you mean the abortion? And he laughed. And he said, yes. And I said, yes. Then I heard this harsh sucking sound and felt this extreme amount of pressure. And I knew in that moment that I was going to have nightmares about tornadoes for the entire rest of my life. But then I was thinking, like, well, nightmares about tornadoes, like, that might be sort of pleasant, right? And then I was thinking, like, wow, if intravenous narcotics can make the thought of recurring abortion tornado nightmares seem kind of pleasant, why don't I shoot up every day? Then the sucking sound stopped, and the doctor said, okay, you're done. And I said, well, it's not really me that's done. And then I just had this curiosity, and I said, so, can I see what it looks like? So they both raised eyebrows, but the doctor pulled the stainless steel tub out from between my thighs and brought it up towards my head, and I was too floppy to lift my head up, so the nurse helped me. And I stared down into this tub of like red purple stew that smelled vaguely like really raw steak, and I was thinking, like, where is my daughter in all of this? Steve Martin, acting like a linguistics student turned abortionist, stirred the stew with an instrument that looked vaguely medical until this minuscule white gelatinous blob showed up. And they looked at me thinking, like, is that what you expected? And I looked at it, and I remember thinking about that one Canterbury tale about the chef that makes a stew, and no one can get his recipe from him. It's like a guarded secret, and then later on in the Canterbury Tales, it's released that he always has kind of an open boil on his leg. They looked at me like, okay. And I remember thinking I should say something to acknowledge their exceptional customer service in this situation. But at this point, the narcotics were starting to wear off, and I was starting to feel a lot of pain, and I was also ready to be really done with this whole situation. And I just wanted to drive back home to Cape Cod, and I had to start doing my taxes, and I needed to renew my shellfishing permit. And then I was thinking about shellfishing, and so I just said, wow, if that blob was a clam, it wouldn't be legal. Then they rolled me into a waiting room, and I ate graham crackers and drank apple juice with the 16 to 22-year-olds. And the nurse kept asking me all these really obvious questions like, hey, do you know when your birthday is? And when I could answer them sufficiently, I drove home, crampy and bleeding, and so terribly sad. That night, my friends came over, and they made fresh squeezed grapefruit juice, and they had a dart tournament in my living room, and they told me a lot of jokes and made me laugh a lot. And in that moment, my abortion became just another thing that happened. Just like one of those other things that happens in your life. It's a hard thing. It's a shitty thing. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's just a thing. It's a thing, not a pleasant memory, but it's a thing I have never regretted, and it's a decision that I have literally never questioned. A couple years went by, and my ex and I got the divorce that we'd been heading for a long time. For a while, we tried to keep in touch, stay friends or whatever. And one night, he called me from Chicago, and we had literally like the dumbest conversation ever. It was like 5 minutes of my life that I'll never get back. We talked about the weather or something. And after we rang off, I hung up the phone, and I looked at it, and I said, thank God I didn't have your baby. Thank you.